Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. As always, I am Cosmic, and today we're reviewing Anima Gates of Memories, a third-person role-playing game based upon the fantasy role-playing game books and miniatures game developed by the same people, the Anima project. The game originated on Kickstarter, where it amassed over $110,000 back in 2013, so it's had a fairly long development cycle since then. Set in the world of Gaia, the game places you in the role of both an unnamed girl known as the Bearer of Calamities and Ergo Mundus, a demon bound to a book that is also bound to the Bearer. These two individuals work for the Order of Nathaniel, a group devoted to fighting the forces of darkness and keeping that darkness hidden from the world. Events unfold that place the Bearer and Ergo at the centre of world-ending events, where choices they make will have major consequences. Animus begins like any classic RPG would do in its stead. A little introduction to the world, then it puts you in the thick of it, knowing very little about what is going on and who the characters are. The first few hours of Animus from a narrative perspective is a confusing foray into a world that clearly has a lot of lore, but it chooses not to showcase much of it. No doubt fans of the role-playing game books will feel no confusion at first, unlike myself, where, while bits and pieces fitted together about the characters, I still had no idea what the fuck was going on, other than I had to do this because the story required me to do so. It's a plot that slowly reveals itself, and there's something fun in that. It reminds me of playing Final Fantasy X for the first time and having to slowly grasp just what the hell is going on in this world. Animus does have some decent story points, including the fact that there are several endings that depend on your in-game choices. The problem falls in essentially the dialogue. It isn't that the dialogue is poorly written, although at times it can be. It's that the writers seem to have a very unusual, borderline creepy sense of humour, especially when it came to Ergo. Ergo frequently calls the Bearer babe and jokes about doing stuff to her while she sleeps. It's full of really creepy dialogue and some awful jokes and references, like Ergo doing a paradox of the Reading Rainbow song. It was painful. I'm all for humour and I don't mind a little creepiness sometimes, but frequently joking that a demon is essentially molesting a girl in her sleep is just not funny, and it comes off as coarse and poor. The dialogue is not helped by the voice actors, whose performance ranges rapidly even for the same character. Ergo's voice actor can sound legitimate one moment and then completely awful the next, and it's just a total mess in that regard. Mechanically, the game has some solid ideas, but fails in its overall execution of those ideas. The combat works from a simple button combo system. Putting combos together is easy done once you've unlocked a few different moves via the skill tree. Combat is fairly simple in practice. Most enemies are easily taken down. As you progress, enemies do gain unique mechanics and tactics that you'll need to get to grips with in order to overcome them. Boss battles in particular have the most unique mechanics, although some feel like drone old school MMO boss battles where it's just phase after phase after phase. However, some boss battles can be exceedingly challenging, and I do like that a lot of the boss battles are quite challenging to overcome. The major problem with the combat, again, comes in its execution. The poor camera movement, unresponsive and sluggish controls, combined with the character movement from a bygone era, is lamentable. The camera movement in particular is particularly problematic for a game focused around freeform combat. The sole redeeming feature about the camera is that on occasion and in certain rooms, it can switch to a static camera, almost like a spectacle fighter, very much in the vein of Devil May Cry, which is a lot of fun, and it's a really nice little cinematic tool that they use. But it's sad that it always returns after that to the freeform camera that has a host of control problems. The two characters in Animus occupy the same space. You can flawlessly switch between them, between the Bearer and Ergo, and you can do this even mid-attack combo. Both have separate skill trees, health bars and items. The skill tree itself is straightforward for both characters and allows you to specialise in either ranged magic attacks or melee combo moves, or a little of both should you choose. Having two characters means that you can specialise one character in ranged and one in melee, leaving you to switch depending on the enemy and depending on your situation, which is a really nice fun mechanic to have in there. Items that you can equip offer statistical bonuses and range from weapons to artifacts that you can equip. You can only equip 2 weapons and 2 artifacts for any one character, and they are littered throughout the world, particularly in hidden areas, but you can also buy them from various vendors. When you're not in combat, you're probably out exploring, and the game does have a quite large world. The game starts off small in scope and pretty much confines you to certain areas. Later on in the game does open up. Now, one thing I do like about the exploration is that it has a ton of puzzles, and as you go through the game, you get various different puzzles, all of which have been constructed fairly well. The problem lies in the exploration in the sense that the game has a sincere lack of direction. I had regularly no idea where I was going, where I was supposed to be going, and not only did I not know where I was going, but often I would trigger story events or events that probably could change depending on where I chose to go. And I had no idea how I was triggering those events. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea where I was supposed to be going. I had no idea other than I have to do this overall main objective. The game had a clear sense of direction in terms of giving the player, here, you're supposed to be going here, or giving the player clues in the sense that, like, I'm not asking for a map or, some kind of trail to basically walk me by the hand, but it would be nice to have certain clues available so that I could basically figure out where I was supposed to be going and what my current objective was other than to save the world. Because it kind of got a little bit frustrating when I was running back and forth and I was triggering all these events. And in a game that is all about different endings and choice and consequences, I would like to know what choices I actually have, where I'm supposed to be going. If I go there, this happens. If I go there, that happens. And I would like to know what that option would be. The last major problem of exploration is the platforming. The character movement is that bad and the camera movement is that bad that jumping and double jumping becomes an exercise in frustration when you're trying to go through a certain platforming area, because it just you end up dying a lot, sometimes due to the camera movement, sometimes due to the character movement, and it is just a very, very frustrating experience in terms of the platforming side. And I really got to the point in the game where every time there was a platforming section or I had to jump up and down for some reason, it just made me cringe and die a little inside because of how frustrating it was. I literally spent about 5 minutes trying to get over a particular broken bridge, which the jump didn't even require a double jump, mind you. Didn't even require a double jump. But if you did not jump from the very, very corner of the bridge, then you basically would not make it. And even though if you double jumped in theory, you could, it just wouldn't allow you to do it. And it was driving me crazy to the point where I wanted to throw my mouse and keyboard through the bloody screen. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the graphics. Now, the game does run fairly well. There's a couple of frame rate drops here and there, but other than that, it is fairly stable. There's a couple of bugs that I experienced, but nothing game-breaking. Graphically, I really like Anima's art style. I like the anime-esque type style. The problem with it was that some textures looked really bad compared to that of the characters, and even then within the characters you had the main characters that looked and were drawn really fantastically, but then you had the side characters that weren't, and it almost looked as if some characters weren't part of the same aesthetic than others, and it looked really weird, and I didn't particularly like that. But I did like that they went for a nice anime style. It just varies massively in quality. The last part was the cutscenes, and the cutscenes themselves were disappointing because they were static. I was hoping for when it actually came to the in-game stuff that, you know, you would have some movement, but instead it's just static poses, and the only thing that moves and the anime overlays the actual game, and then you get to see them talking and stuff, which is fine. Lots of anime games do it that way. I was just hoping for an actual cutscene that wasn't static, and I would have really enjoyed a cutscene that was not static, more in the style of Tales of Vesperia and stuff like that. They do cutscenes perfectly, and they do them so well. Even, you know, even though it's not done in engine, for example, even the stuff that's not done in engine in Tales is done so well. And I was really hoping that Anima was going to do something like that, but it didn't, and that was disappointing. Overall, let's be clear, Anima has a host of problems, to the point where I'm not going to recommend it. I think it does have certain good points, and I think that if you are interested in the game, then by all means, go and pick it up, give it a try. There's a lot of people who do like it. I personally don't. I think that it has a host of core mechanical problems that don't rely on its design, because on paper, this game is fantastic. The problem has came with its execution, its lack of polish, and ultimately it just needs some refining. And I think that, you know, it's one of those things. It's had a very long development cycle already. Could it use another year? Probably, but you know, they can't do that. And there's just some execution and ultimate polish issues here that are clear and just make a lot of the game very, very frustrating. You know, the camera needs fixed, the character movement needs fixed, the platforming sections need fixed, the responsiveness and the controls needs fixed, the fluidity of the overall combat needs fixed. There's a lot of problems in this game, and for that reason, I just simply can't recommend you go out and buy it straight off. Pick it up in a sale, maybe. Pick it up for $5-10. You'll definitely get your money's worth easy from the game. And to be honest, the amount of content isn't the problem. It's just the overall execution and quality, because the game is currently $20 on Steam as its main price. And for that price, you are going to get your money's worth in terms of if you stick with it and play through the game. You're definitely going to get your money's worth in that regard. But like I say, the problem becomes, are you going to want to get through it with its execution problems? And I think that Anima does offer a really interesting universe and a really interesting world, but it just has some core design feature flaws that really make the overall experience very frustrating and not fun to play, especially when you can play, you know, other games that try to be spectacle fighter / RPGs, because I mean, it likes to think of itself as an action RPG, but it's almost trying to be a spectacle fighter with RPG elements in it, and it's essentially trying to be a anime Devil May Cry in, you know, with some RPG features, which doesn't really work when you compare the two. When you compare Devil May Cry to Anima, well, you can see the clear difference. So I recommend that you definitely pick it up in a sale. So that is my review of Anima Gates of Memories. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Do like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I will see you next time.